Last week, Flash Annual 2021 was released, and I gotta say, leading up to this, I was really worried that I might have to ditch DC Comics entirely. But Flash Annual 2021 came in for the save, and I could not be happier. Just before we get into it, though, I just want to make it clear if you're not up to date with all things Flash, this will contain spoilers. I'm not sure of what yet, but if you care about that stuff, pause this video, go in the description and see what I will be talking about because I'm not sure yet. Just to get most of you up to speed as far as where I stood with DC Comics up until now, they recently had a crossover event, which I really loved, Dark Knight's Death Metal, and it ended in yet another reboot of the DC universe, and I was like, you know what, fuck this. If DC is going to reboot their universe every 5 years, I'm tapping out for this one. I'll see in 5 years when you reboot your universe again, and maybe I'll tag along that way. But of course, I'm going to at least continue to read Flash comics because the Flash is my favorite superhero, tied with Spider-Man, and rebooting your universe 3 times in 15 years isn't enough to get me to abandon my favorite superhero. After a brief stint of Barry Allen not having super speed, I'm not kidding, we got introduced to a more formal reboot of Flash, of the Flash series. And at first, the first arc was essentially Quantum Leap, but with Wally West. So Wally would teleport into a speedster at some point in time and have to resolve some like speed force explosion before like it destroys a huge part of the world at that time. And he's kind of like bouncing back and forth through the timeline, fixing plugs in the Speed Force. I should give a quick explanation of what the Speed Force is. So the Speed Force is many things, but the main ones is it's the source of the DC Speedster's superpowers. So any speedster taps into the Speed Force to run at super speed. And it's also essentially speedster heaven. So especially in the 90s, they really did a good job of playing this balance. But the premise was if a speedster runs fast enough, at a certain point, they're going to like hear the call and they're just going to be tempted to run faster and faster. And essentially, eventually, if they keep running at that speed, they'll just enter the Speed Force, never to return. Because why would you voluntarily leave heaven? You know, so that was that. And like I was saying, Wally West was bouncing around in time, fixing plugs in the Speed Force before this major explosion happens, and it was interesting enough to keep me going. But after like the third or fourth bounce, I was like, y'all better start dropping hints as to who's behind this really fast because it's getting old, you know. Enter Flash Annual 2021 now. Before we get into that, I just want to tie into something because there was a mini series published a couple years ago called Heroes in Crisis. And the reason I'm getting into this is because the last jump just before Flash Annual was Wally jumped into himself during Heroes in Crisis. And Heroes in Crisis, just to give an explanation of it, it centered around a place called Sanctuary, okay? And Sanctuary is essentially where superheroes go for therapy, which was a very interesting read because you get to see a part of superheroes that you never see. Like mental health in the superhero world is like largely ignored. I mean, why would you pay attention to that? It's a power fantasy, right? So it was really interesting to see that side of superheroes. I'll elaborate in a second. Now, in Heroes in Crisis, Wally West was one of the people who was at Sanctuary. And during the events of Heroes in Crisis, at some point, Wally loses control of his powers, and it causes this explosion, killing everyone who was there at the time. And naturally, Wally felt super guilty about this. So, at the conclusion of the previous issue of The Flash, where he jumps into himself at Sanctuary just before that fucking explosion where he killed everyone, it was a very traumatic event, and he's like, "Oh no, please don't make me relive this again." But at the same time, it was also bittersweet because he essentially learned that he's not the one who killed all those people. It was the explosion in the Speed Force that he had been dealing with up to this point, and Sanctuary just so happened to be one of those explosions. And since he was the speedster, of course it was focused around him. So that was really cool. Now, before I continue, I just want to yes, exactly, Darth Shady. He merges with his past self. You absolutely understood that. Before I continue with what happened in Flash Annual, because there's another part that I found really cool. I just want to reiterate how Heroes in Crisis was really interesting, because the way it was set up. Because obviously these are superheroes, they have secret identities. You can't just have these people spilling the beans and the risk of that information getting out. And, embarrassment is one thing, but your secret identity getting out and putting all your loved ones as risk is a very serious thing, right? So the way it worked was there would just be this room where a hero could just vent into a camera. And there was also some kind of like holodeck where if they felt that they needed to, they could program the holodeck and relive certain things to just help with the processing. And I'm not going to read all this, but again, you got to see a side of, for instance, Superman. It was really fascinating watching this guy saying, I grew up as Clark Kent, a Kansas kid. Then I discovered that I had other parents and that I have powers. And this is the part that I want to reread, because I remember reading this a couple years ago and finding it really fascinating. I didn't want people to know I was Superman, so I had to make Superman different from Clark. I adjusted them. Clark was clumsy, Superman was reliable. But if I adjusted each to be further away from me, then which one was I? Or was I neither? Is Clark Superman trying to be flawed? Or is Superman Clark trying to be better? I really loved the therapy sessions of some of these people. And one in particular, of all the people that you would not expect to have open up, fucking Bruce Wayne is you really wouldn't expect him to open up. And case in point, there are two silent panels here, and the only one in which he speaks in this one, I forget, there was probably more, but it's like, I train partners to work with me, they become my family, I've watched so many of them die. And then another silent panel. Again, if you get a chance to read Heroes in Crisis, I would really recommend it if you're into that thing. But the part that was really interesting for me, personally, is because when not only did we learn that it's not that Wally killed all these people, it's that he happened to be at the wrong place at the right time. He was the speedster at Sanctuary when the Speed Force explosion happened, and that's it. And then the reveal happened, and I gotta say, this was very awesome for me, because the person behind it happened to be one of my favorite characters in the Flash world. And the funny thing is, as soon as he started speaking, I knew it was him. I couldn't find that page, but I'm just going to read this. So he's at Sanctuary, the explosion is about to happen, and then this voice springs forth from the Speed Force, and it says, so that's how it was able to push me out, using one of its former slaves to do its bidding. But I am no slave. I am its master, the chosen one. he who was foretold to become one with this great power. And that's when it was revealed that the person behind it was Savitar. Savitar was first introduced in the 90s. This was back when I was still reading physical comic books. I actually have Savitar was introduced in a series called Dead Heat, and I actually have the issues of Dead Heat in that cabinet behind me. And Savitar was basically a speedster who went crazy, and he declared himself the god of speed, which is why when he was saying that, like, I am the master of the Speed Force, I knew it was him. And his 2021 makeover was really nice, you know. The funny thing is, in Dead Heat, where he was introduced, the solution that they found was, you know, hey, if you want to be the god of the Speed Force, we're going to give you what you want. So in essence, they defeated Savitar by pushing him into the Speed Force, and that's where he was trapped. And a couple years later, during Flash Rebirth, where Barry Allen came back to life, there was a very, very brief appearance by Savitar, which I was... it was very bittersweet for me, because when he appeared in Flash Rebirth, I was like, yeah, Savitar's back. But unfortunately, he mysteriously, like, aged into dust a couple pages later. Actually, you know what? I'm going to try to see if I can find that page. Sifting through all this is going to take too long. But in essence, like I said, Savitar pops out of the Speed Force, and then Barry catches up to him a couple pages later, and as soon as Barry touches him, he, like, ages into, like, a dusty skeleton, like Indiana Jones style. And I was like, oh, that's a shame. So yeah, I was really happy to see him come back. So the fact that this quantum leap thing that we've been going through for the last couple months ended in Savitar being behind the whole thing, and also tying back to Heroes in Crisis, where we learned that finally Wally West was feeling guilty all these years for nothing. It wasn't his fault that all those people died. So that was really, really cool. But unfortunately, there is a consequence which I'm not sure what I think of, but those of you who were here last week heard me talk about jobbers, which is a wrestling term used for wrestlers who are low card and their only function is to be defeated by the main eventers in the roster, and also to make them look good. So a jobber will always lose, but always make the main eventer look good. And when I was reviewing Black Widow, I said, as a rule of thumb, because essentially supervillains always lose in superhero comics. Of course they do. But the real question is, how long does it take? Like, does it take a 6-part series or maybe more, or are they, like, swiftly defeated in the same issue that they're revealed in? Well, unfortunately, as much as I love Savitar, and Dead Heat was, like, I think it was a 6-part series. Yeah, it was a 6-part miniseries. So, half a year, that's respectable. However, the next 2 times that Savitar appears, he's defeated in the same issue. So my favorite superhero, one of my favorite supervillains in the Flash world is now a jobber. The fucking god of speed, or the self-proclaimed god of speed, is a jobber, which, I don't know what I feel about that. The way that he popped into a portal, or was yanked into a portal at the end, hinted that his return is likely to be in, a couple years, as opposed to, like, 5 to 10 years or whatever. So I'm really happy that so far the first arc of The Flash in this new rebooted DC universe, I give it a thumbs up. I think they drew it out 1 or 2 beats too much for my liking, but the wait was worth it. I love Savitar. And who is your favorite supervillain? Please leave a comment in the section below. If you like this video, please like the video. I hope you enjoyed this. I do these streams every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon.